America's voice of reason, Boyd Matheson, on Utah's home for elevated conversation. Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
All right, welcome to Inside Sources, the fastest couple of hours in radio, and this is your host, Derek Brown. I'm here with my co-host and good friend Leah Murray.
And it's always a pleasure to be with you, Derek.
And it is so much fun. Usually we do the night show.
I know.
And so today
they brought us in today.
They did. We're channeling our inner Boyd.
We're going to try.
We'll try.
I don't think we'll ever achieve inner Boyd status, but we're going to work on
Possibly.
it.
Possibly. This is one step closer. And there is so much going on. And in fact, one of the biggest news stories that a lot of you have seen, which if you haven't been following it, it will impact your life slightly. And that is the change in election days that will be coming up. So we have a member of Congress, Chris Stewart, who has announced that he is officially, we knew last week he was going to be announcing his, he'd be stepping down from Congress, and, which is, it's tragic. He's done a great job, very committed to Utah, and for health reasons of his wife, he says, I'm going to be stepping down. Now that's sent sort of a shockwave through the political community because number one, you have people who, people who want to run.
Right. So I feel like a lot of the stories have been about who's going to run for the seat, how are they going to campaign. But I think more interesting, maybe shockwave, is when the timeline came out, Derek, they changed all the municipal elections.
Exactly.
Right. So we're not just planning a special election to replace Representative Chris Stewart. All these people who are running in city offices for city councils and for mayors all across the state, now their elections have changed as well, right?
Exactly.
That's across the whole spectrum.
So if you're running a campaign, I mean, this is a major event that takes, most campaigns are planned 6 to 12 months in advance. You have timelines, you have things you need to do, and stuff that goes out in the mail. I mean, you've got a lot going on, and to have that kind of changed midstream
must be hard.
It's hard. It's a big deal.
Yeah.
And so we've got someone on the line for whom this will have an impact and can talk with a degree of, personal experience about what this happened, what this looks like. And so we have with us Ben Adalski. Ben currently represents District 4 in Ogden. He's running to be Ogden's mayor, and we're thrilled to have Ben on with us. Ben, thanks for joining us.
Well, thanks for having me. Appreciate the opportunity.
So, first of all, I want to say your bio has what has to be the coolest phrase.
Yeah, we like this line, Ben.
Leah and I have been just giggling about this. Your biography, your bio online, I just have to read it because it's not every day you hear this. It says, let's see here, after graduating from Weber State University with a degree in criminal justice in 2000, Ben was jumping from helicopters and wrestling elk for the Utah Division of Wildlife Resources. Is this true? Before we start, you gotta tell us what that means, because that's got to be one of the best, resume statements I think I've ever heard.
That statement is 100% true. Just before that, I was picking up dead animals off the side of the road, and that earned me an opportunity to jump out of helicopters and wrestle elk. So
I love that.
And why did you ever stop? Yeah. It seems to me that would be the greatest job ever. Of course, probably some hazard pay, but
it was the greatest job ever, but it's been part and parcel of the greatest career ever.
Oh,
so I'm still with the Division of Wildlife Resources, and now I oversee day-to-day operations in northern Utah, and have had a whole bunch of experiences between then and as being a biologist and a river restoration expert and working with local communities, and even got to work with the Governor's Public Lands Office and various policy issues and oversaw legislative affairs as well. So it's been an interesting career and journey.
I love that. All right, Ben, to let me focus us on what we wanted to talk to you about what was your initial reaction to the news about the date changes around the municipal elections?
Well, certainly my initial reaction was uncertainty. But have you ever seen a winning campaign that is static? I haven't, right? So you mentioned in the intro that there's a lot of planning that goes into a campaign, and it's true. But one of the things that you plan for is uncertainty, and this is certainly one of those. So we can look at this from the negative light because it does change timelines. It does change when we vote and when we do certain things and strategies. But at the same time, it's an opportunity for us to share our message for a couple weeks more, for us to get in front of more voters for a couple more weeks, to get caught up in some of the timelines that we planned for and might be falling behind on. So I see a lot of silver linings. But more importantly, and most important, is that representation is the thing that matters. And if we make these adjustments in our campaigns, it gives Utah, and especially the 2nd Congressional District, an opportunity to be represented. Because with current law, the way I understood it, if we didn't make these changes as candidates and campaigns, we would be leaving the 2nd Congressional District and therefore a big part of Utah without representation where it matters and when it matters. So to me, I think this is a small adjustment that we can make so that we can accommodate a really important and big priority for all of us, which is representation.
That's great. And, I love that attitude. And I'll
Yeah.
tell you why. I served, and I'm still kind of suffering from the PTSD of this, but I served as the chairman of the Utah Republican Party for a number of years, and it was right during COVID. And so when COVID happened, you have all these major governor campaigns that had been in the works, some of them for years, millions of dollars on the line. And all of a sudden, like overnight, their campaigns that they thought they were going to run, all of a sudden they didn't. Right, Leah? I mean, that's kind of what happened. And so, and what I loved about this is, as much as a lot of them were complaining, I said to the delegates who were going to be voting for these folks, I said, listen, if there's one hallmark of a good elected official, it's someone who can look at things the way Ben just said, which is, look, life is not static.
And
right?
I love that.
It is dynamic. It changes all the time. And if you want someone who knows what they're doing, someone who's going to be good in public office, it's someone who can pivot quickly, change with adjusting circumstances, and go a different route. And so you got all these campaigns. And I would say to these delegates, I said, look, this is your time to watch them. Like they're in a real life crisis. And as like the governor of our state, there's going to be many more to come. Watch closely how she or he responds right now. So anyway, Ben, I really appreciate that attitude, because for those of you who don't know, the primary is now September the 5th, and the general is November the 21st, which is basically, what is that, Leah? Pushing him back about 2 weeks.
Couple weeks, yeah.
each.
So, Ben, I feel like one of your pitches is going to be what Derek just gave you. I am totally adaptable and agile. When there's some kind of crisis, I'm ready to go. But can you tell us a little bit about, what your pitch is to voters? Like, why would people want to vote for you up in Ogden?
Absolutely. So to get back to that first point, I think we all have our crosses to bear, and I think chronic optimism might be one of mine. But I think it's really important because we need to be optimistic about our future, because there's plenty to be optimistic about. There's also a lot to be distracted by in the news and in the media and so on. But people are really frustrated with that, and they want us to put our priorities where they matter. And for me, through my service in the city council and through my campaign for mayor, I want to make our people our priority. I want to make sure that our priorities are the priorities that they have on the day-to-day. And so I feel that if we are putting our priorities in that place, that we are putting our attention and our resources right where it matters the most, so that our families and our kids and our people of our community can be their best selves. And most importantly, too, is that as we look to where we're making our investments, we're going to need to be making decisions and governing in the day-to-day, but we want to make sure that we're always future-focused. And I think the best way that we can focus on the future is to make sure that we're focusing on our kids.
So Ben, what are some of
Go
the issues now you're dealing with in Ogden? I mean, Ogden has some, it's got some unique challenges and it's growing like crazy. And the Ogden I see today is so different from the Ogden I saw 10 or 20 years ago. So what are in the last minute we've actually only got about 30 seconds. Give us the quick rundown of what you see the biggest challenges are.
Well, I'm glad you see the difference, because it didn't happen by accident. Those differences were made by people. And so the things that we need to continue to focus on are making sure that we have infrastructure that connects our neighborhoods and our schools and our churches, to make sure we've got educational opportunities for our kids and for our families, to make sure we have recreation opportunities for our kids, make sure we have safe streets and safe neighborhoods with police and fire that's second to none. And we can pay for all of those things by providing the economic prosperity that we need to pay those bills. So the jobs, the businesses, the small businesses, the people that work in those places, helping us create the prosperity and the economic engine to pay for those opportunities to make our people the best that they can be.
All right, Ben Nadolski, running for office up in Mayor. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah. So, Derek, coming up after the break, I want to keep talking about the special election, not just about how it affects municipal races, but also what's going on.
There's a lot out there right now.
Yeah.
This changes a lot of things.
Okay. Stay with us after the break.
right on cue for summer.
OPEC plans to cut oil production.
Gas prices are headed up.
It could drive up prices for other goods.
Whether you're planning a staycation or a day trip, start your summer here. Get updates on traffic out of town, gas prices, and everything you need to know. Listen each day this summer, mornings and afternoons, to KSL News Radio.
Register for breaking news updates by texting the word news to the Cyprus Credit Union KSL text line at 57500.
Our state's children face a serious threat from the vaping industry. But thanks to state leaders and the Utah Health Department, Utah established the strictest nicotine standards for vaping in the United States to protect our kids. However, the vaping industry sued, claiming their sales and profits are down. Now they're pushing the health department to hand control of vaping regulations to the federal government. We can't allow that to happen. The proposed change would automatically increase nicotine levels in vape pens and reintroduce fruity flavors that entice our kids back into Utah convenience stores. Visit StopKidsVaping.com today and make your voice heard. Utah should maintain state control, preserve our 3% nicotine limitations, and prevent vaping flavors from returning to Utah convenience stores. Together, we can secure a better future for our children. Join us at StopKidsVaping.com and tell the health department, protect our kids.
Paid for by Prosperous Utah Communities.
You know how they always used to ask you in grade school, what do you want to be when you grow up? I bet I'm the only kid who ever stood proud and said, I want to be a rain gutter or siding installer. Jim Jr. here with RGS Exteriors, and man, I can still remember all those wannabe astronauts and quarterbacks looking at me like I was an idiot. Who would want to install rain gutters or siding? Somebody who was a fourth generation in business. That's who. My great-grandfather, T.R. Brown, started the company in the 50s. Then my grandfather took over from him, then my dad, Tim Sr., and now I've been at the helm since 2005. Every day I wake up and think, man, I'm living the dream. And now my own kids are starting to work in the business too. 5 generations. If you want gutters, siding, windows, or any exteriors on your home, and a company that really cares deep down to our souls, give RGS a call. 801-280-3110 or find us online, rgsutah.com. That's rgsutah.com. 801-280-3110, rgsutah.com.
I found, Tim, that one of the hardest things about being a mom is just deciding what to cook for dinner every night.
I know.
Which is part of why I'm so excited to tell everybody about Beehive Meals.
It is a Utah company, and at some point we're going to have to tell the story of the Jacksons and how they actually got this going in 2019. But if you've been struggling with having tacos one night and spaghetti another night, open up your world for dinner with things like Mongolian beef stir-fry or Parmesan honey pork roast.
Your family dinner has just never been easier than it is with these. They're pre-assembled freezer meals. I put it in the crock pot. I set it for how long it needs to go. It stays warm after that. And that way, if the family can't all eat together, if one person has basketball and another, it's just warm for whenever they're ready.
And by the way, less than $3.50 per serving. You couldn't go out to the store or out to dinner, certainly on your own, for that price.
You're absolutely right, Tim. I couldn't buy the ingredients for any less.
Start it for your family right now. Go to beehivemeals.com.
My brother-in-law died suddenly, and now my sister and her kids have to sell their home. That's why I told my husband we could not put off getting life insurance any longer. An agent offered us a 10-year, $500,000 policy for nearly $50 a month. Then we called SelectQuote. SelectQuote found us identical coverage for only $19 a month. A savings of $369 a year.
Whether you need a $500,000 policy or a $5 million policy, SelectQuote could save you more than 50% on term life insurance. For your free quote, call SelectQuote at 1-800-330-1991. That's 1-800-330-1991. Or go to SelectQuote.com. That's 1-800-330-1991. SelectQuote. We shop, you save. Full details on example policies at selectquote.com/commercials.
The UACPA supports certified professional accountants in Utah through ongoing professional education and leadership development for an ever-changing financial world. Find a CPA at uacpa.org.
With the 3 things you need to know this hour, I'm Dan Bomas. First, while water levels are up, managers of the Great Salt Lake continue to battle invasive water-sucking plants that cause problems for the lake's ecosystem. Second, now that we know we'll hold a special election on November 21st, Candidates are officially announcing they're running to fill the seat for Congressman Chris Stewart. And third, 2 people have been found dead at their home in Hiram. Both died from gunshot wounds. Right now, 79 degrees, mostly cloudy in Salt Lake City. And back to Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Get deeper insights on the news from Inside Sources.
Welcome back. You're here with me, Leah Murray, and my good friend Derek Brown as we chat about all the most interesting things that are happening today. And we have got with us fabulous KSL News Radio reporter Lindsay Aerts to give us all the deets. Spill the tea, Lindsay.
I call her the Indomitable.
Oh my gosh,
indomitable.
I get a different adjective every
I'm sorry,
time.
do you like fabulous or
Well,
indomitable better?
Keep going. Give me some more. Give me some more. I don't
It's
know.
a multiple choice question, is it?
No, there's one right
Award-winning.
answer.
Taylor calls me award-winning.
Oh, I like
There we
that.
go.
Oh,
Well,
Taylor won.
And
Taylor won.
Lindsay
Yes.
has been dogged on this issue. There's no one right now in Utah who knows more about the issue we're about to talk about than Lindsay Aerts. So tell us, first of all, for those who haven't been following, what is what's the big issue with elections and the dates changing and how this impacts actually quite a bit going forward this year?
Yeah, the whole state, really. Okay, so most people know that Chris Stewart is resigning. He's resigning on September 15th, and we now have to fill his seat. We're doing that by special election, but the whole drama has been, when are we holding the special election? We now know that we are holding this special election on November 21st. We are holding this special election primary before that on September 5th, but in order to do that, we had to push back all of Utah's cities' elections. So those city elections will also now be on September 5th and November 21st.
And so, Lindsay, tell us why did they have to do that? Why couldn't they just sort of follow the law as it currently is written?
Yeah, so Utah has a special election law. This is a law that was put in after Jason Chaffetz resigned in 2017. It dictates the process for when we can hold special elections. And in that law, it has basically a 180-day window and dictates that we can only hold the election on certain existing election days. A municipal election is not one of those. A municipal primary is not one of those. And this window is also 180 days. And so if we follow the law currently, if the legislature does nothing, the law as it stands right now would mean we wouldn't be able to hold this election until November of this year, early November for a primary, and March of next year for the general. So that, because we know Chris Stewart is stepping down September 15th, that would leave the seat vacant from September all the way until March of 2024. And clearly Republican leadership in this state was not on board with that.
Right.
And my hunch is that Republican leadership at the national level was not on board.
Yeah, right.
But they've only got a 5-vote majority. I'm sure they weren't thrilled to know that would be 4.
Right, exactly. So what we are doing is we are pushing the municipal elections back a few weeks. We are holding this special election for this 2nd congressional district seat on the same days. Again, it's September 5th and November 21st. The legislature has to go into special session. They've now been called by the governor to go into special session to change this law. They are going to shorten the timeline, and they're also going to probably add language that says we can now hold special elections on municipal primary days, because the law right now doesn't say that.
Gotcha. All right. So you're talking about the word primary. Makes me want to just ask this question. So are the people who have registered for a party, Lindsay, kind of stuck with that choice for this primary that's coming up? Or could people be now making their party decisions in preparation for a primary they weren't expecting? Because remember, the congressional one's going to be a party primary, whereas municipal would not have been.
Right. Okay. So let's think through this a little bit. Let me just state for the record, I'm working on a story on this for tomorrow morning. So your question is ultimately, can people switch parties at this point?
Let's go with that.
Yeah. That is your question. Can you register as any party right now? So in a typical election, in a regular general election that we hold at regular times, Utah's law stipulates when you can register and when you need to affiliate with a political party. And I believe the dates are in there. I think if the election's going to, Derek, you know those.
Well, I actually just got a text
Okay.
from Representative Jordan Tusher,
Okay.
who passed this bill. And
Yeah.
he said it's April 1st. So the date is actually set in code, except he said in presidential election years, there's a bill they passed that moves it to the day after the filing deadline. But apparently this doesn't really
this doesn't apply.
Yeah. And so
because
I think
it's a
that
special
may be,
election.
Yeah.
Got it.
Exactly.
Okay.
So he was just saying that may be that's one of the reasons that it may be part of what we're going to see next week in the special election.
So are they going to change that? Did you ask
well,
him that?
I didn't yet because I just got the text. But
this is how we gather news.
But you'll know
KSL News
tomorrow,
Radio.
Lindsay, right? So we'll figure it out.
I will work to figure this out before tomorrow. But essentially what Derek is finding out and what we are kind of talking about on the fly here is that in a typical election where we were electing a president or it was a midterm election, you could not switch your party affiliation after the filing deadline. But because this is a special election, those rules don't apply. It sounds like. I'm going to get that confirmed, but it sounds like that law does not apply to this election.
Well, and here's what makes Lindsay's job infinitely more difficult as a reporter is it's one thing to report what the law says.
Yeah.
It's another thing for you to also have to speculate what the law might be
next
week at this time because I think it's almost guaranteed it will be different.
Yeah. Well, that is a big question I have right now is will you change this law to make sure people can't party switch, right? Because that is something that particularly the Republican Party in Utah has been concerned about, kind of trying to quote unquote what they call game the system and register as we know this is a heavily Republican state. You register as a Republican, you can vote in their closed primary. So this CD2 race will be a closed primary for Republicans, so you'll need to be a registered Republican to vote. That's what we do know. The question at this point is, can you still register as a Republican? Is there any deadline on when you can affiliate with the Republican Party?
Okay, so Lindsay, it's going to be a closed primary. There's going to be some names on that ballot. Can you tell us who all is officially in?
Yes.
Who we're expecting to see in?
Yes.
Go.
What I can tell you right now is I have confirmed with Greg Hughes. I have confirmed with Derek Huff. I have confirmed
Bruce Huff.
Sorry,
not the dancer.
Derek is
the
his
dancer.
son,
Derek
the
is his
dancer.
son. Sorry, that was a slip of the tongue.
That was funny.
Bruce Huff.
She's a groupie, clearly.
Okay, I clearly am a fan, and also maybe that's
Maybe
how
we
people
should let
best know
Derek
him.
know.
Right?
Maybe we should let him know too.
And that's maybe how people best know Bruce Huff, is he's the dad of Derek and Julianne Huff.
But he's
right?
also the Republican National Committee man, and he was the chair of the party. So in the Republican circles, he's very well known.
He's well known in the party, but maybe not as much broad name recognition. So sorry, Bruce Huff, Greg Hughes. I just talked to Jordan Hess. He's the current the vice chair of the Republican Party. He says he does intend to gather signatures. So that means he's likely to be in. He just hasn't done it yet.
I think he's going to file. I don't think he's going to gather signatures.
Sorry. Gosh, I'm misspeaking all over the place.
I want to be clear because I think that's something for him that's probably
thing.
a big deal. He also lives in the St. George area, which is kind of an interesting dynamic.
Yeah, and that's a thing for him. I didn't mean to say gather signatures. I meant to say intends to declare his candidacy. So there's that. Who have I missed? Becky Edwards has already declared with me previously before the schedule came out. I have not spoken to her today, but she told me she was in no matter what. So unless she's changed her mind, she hasn't said that, but we're assuming she's still in. And then on the Democratic side...
Todd Weiler.
Okay, Todd Weiler I talked to this morning. He said if he decides to run, he will make it known next Wednesday. If he decides to run, he will file next Wednesday. And that is the same day as the legislative session. There's some trickiness there because the legislature has to vote on this law. So it's kind of like, is that a conflict if you are also running in the race? We don't really know the answer to that question either. So something else to look into.
Interesting.
But on the Democrat side, you have State Senator Kathleen Reeby, who I just spoke with today, and she is running for this race. And there are some other names rumored on the Democrat side, so we'll see who else jumps in, because I do want to point out that candidates have between today and next Wednesday to file.
Oh my gosh.
Did I get it?
I think you got it.
Yeah.
And I think if you're not following Lindsay Aerts on Twitter,
you need to.
You need to, because the latest breaking news in Utah politics is always there. That's who I literally have. That's who I have on my computer.
It's kind of a sickness at this point. It's just like, if I know it, I'll tweet it. So, I mean, yeah, there's that.
Do you have any sense, real fast, Lindsay, about how maybe any of the municipal candidates across the states, how their feelings, Yeah,
I think it's certainly a shift for them, and I think maybe it depends on which side of the aisle you're on. Okay. If you're a Democratic city candidate, you're probably like, cool, you just moved my elections, and you don't really care about how it impacts my life. On the Republican side, it sounds like more Republican candidates understand why this is happening.
Exactly. All right, Lindsay Aerts, KSL Indomitable News reporter, thank you for joining us, and stay with us through the break. We'll be right back.
It's 1:30 at KSL News Radio. I'm Dan Bomas. KSL's top local story this hour. 2 people were found dead at their home in Hiram this morning, both apparently dying from gunshot wounds. KSL News Radio's Hugo Rickard-Bell has more.
Cache County Sheriff Chad Jensen says the 37-year-old female and 38-year-old male were found by the couple's 16-year-old daughter.
The 16-year-old child is with other family members at this time.
He says there's no risk to the public.
We're looking at all the avenues, but it doesn't appear that we'll be looking for a suspect outside of the residence.
An investigation is underway and the bodies are currently with the medical examiner. Hugo Rickard-Bell, KSL News Radio.
Guardsman Pass, the road from Park City to Big Cottonwood Canyon, officially open for the summer now. Crews have been hard at work clearing feet of snow off the mountain pass. UDOT reminding people not to park along the narrow road and obey the signs and the posted speed limits. Our top national story this hour from ABC News. President Biden meeting with Britain's Prime Minister Rishi Sunak today at the White House. Here's the Prime Minister during a joint news conference after their meeting.
Not for decades has the relationship between our two nations been so important. The values we share, our belief in freedom, democracy, and the rule of law, have never changed. They never will. But what has changed are the challenges that we face.
And your money at this moment, the Dow Jones average up 172 points on the day, the NASDAQ up 122, S&P right now up 24 points on the day. And our KSL weather looks like that pattern just hangs in there. That's next. KSL News Time, 1:31.
We have enough people running around Broadcast House at 4 in the morning to field a football team.
Producers, reporters, the traffic team, and us.
This is Tim and Amanda.
Join us each morning from 5 to 9 on KSL News Radio.
Incredible savings on all Bernina machines at Dave's Bernina in Provo and St. George.
Don't miss our summer sale.
It's time to get a new Bernina machine and see the difference.
Save big on select Bernina machines. $500 off the Bernina 5 Series and L8 Series Surgers. Take $700 off the 7 Series. $800 off the Bernina 8 models, and save $1,000 on Bernina long arm quilting machines.
Featuring 60 months, no interest on certain models.
But this financing offer is only good through June 12th.
The new Bernina 770QE Plus Cave machine is in stock and specially priced.
Come in and check out the special edition 475 Cave machine. It is discounted along with the Bernina 435.
Amazing bargains on previously owned machines while they last that come with warranties.
Starting at $399.
Hurry in to Dave's Bernina, 691 East St. George Boulevard and 2017 North 550 West in Provo. Follow us on Facebook.
The Management Minute is a service of the MBA program in the John M. Huntsman School of Business at Utah State University. I'm Professor Scott Hammond. You cannot maintain a career. You can change a career, grow a career, abandon a career, but you cannot maintain a career. The simple fact is the water is moving and you're either going up or down. If you are in a job, you need to get ready for what is next, even if your boss, your organization, and your peers stand in your way and cannot see it. Have a career development plan. Look at what is next. Join online professional organizations and learn. Grow your career by learning. You will turn a mediocre job into a career that you love. Grow your career by learning, and you will turn a mediocre job into a career you love. Learn more about career growth. Consider an MBA at Utah State University. Go to utahstatemba.com. I'm Scott Hammond. Hope to see you in one of our classes.
With the economy the way it is, you're probably staying put. So invest in your home, your number one asset, with beautiful custom replacement windows from Advanced Window Products. They're a local Utah company building beautiful vinyl framed and insulated double pane windows for 37 years right here in Salt Lake City. Advanced Window Products will save you money on your energy bill. Get security features to keep your family safe. And at Advanced Window Products, it's all custom. And the best part, they're local. They build the windows, they install the windows, and they guarantee them for life. so there's no middleman markup. You save on the highest quality windows in Utah, plus Rocky Mountain and Dominion offer rebates. For a limited time, they offer 60-month 0% financing, and right now, get $2,000 off 10 windows or more. They're working 8 weeks out, so make the call now. Advanced Window Products, 801-850-9100. That's 801-850-9100, or visit advancedwindowsusa.com.
If you've got a honey-do list with electrical, plumbing, heating, or air conditioning projects on it, Any Hour Services can help. Call Any Hour Services, electrical, plumbing, heating, and air. anyhourservices.com.
Traffic and weather together brought to you by Granite Credit Union, helping members since 1935. Here's Ricky Meese.
For those who are traveling southbound on I-15 through Box Elder County, we just wanted to give you an update that it looks like they've opened up all lanes of traffic, and the huge delays we have are cleared. But northbound I-15 in Salt Lake County, spots of heavy and slow traffic scattered from Sandy through Murray. Save with Burt Brothers on brand name tires, up to $150 off select Goodyear tires, up to $140 off select Bridgestone tires, and $130 off select Firestone tires. Burt Brothers, complete auto care done better. Ricky Meese in the KSL Traffic Center.
KSL weather. We have a pattern of afternoon thunderstorms that will continue through the weekend and into next week, pretty much the same as it's been. Right now, 79 degrees and getting cloudy at KSL News Radio, 102.7 FM, 1160 AM, and KSLNewsRadio.com. Your all-day companion for news.
Hear elevated conversation on crucial issues. Boyd Matheson on Inside Sources.
All right, welcome back to Inside Sources. Here filling in for Boyd Matheson, I am Derek Brown with my good friend and co-host, Leah Murray.
It is always fun to have elevated conversation with you, Derek.
Absolutely. Likewise, there's a lot going on. We just got through talking to KSL's reporter, Lindsay Eretz, about sort of the massive upheaval that's taking place in the election world. So much so that the law is going to be changed next week. It impacts every municipal election across the state. And for those of you who are registered voters, you will be getting ballots, but they'll be coming later than they otherwise would.
Right. And I love how sometimes I think people think we're always talking about elections, and the answer is yes, because they're always coming, right? So right now there's all sorts of news about what's happening in our state elections and in Congressional District 2, but there's also all sorts of information about what's happening at the national level in the 2024 presidential election, Derek, because people are planning, right? So candidates are getting ready to run.
They need to, that's why it feels like there's always an election in place. Right. And sometimes you have announcements of people running for president that are surprising. Yesterday we had an unsurprising one because we were sort of expecting it, and that is Mike Pence.
Right. I want to say Tuesday night, you and I on KSL at Night said we expected him to announce, and I feel like he heard us.
And the next day exactly. He must listen to KSL.
He absolutely must.
So Pence was here in Utah just a little over a month ago. He spoke to a large crowd for a lunch event. He had some other, things. In fact, he was on Inside Sources as part of that visit. And, it was really interesting. He did a great job of fielding some difficult questions. He didn't shy away from things like January 6th, Donald Trump, and that sort of thing. But part of me also feels like at that time we saw this, what appeared to be kind of a surge by DeSantis.
Right.
And I got the impression sitting there that he was trying to say, if you don't like Trump and you're not a big fan of DeSantis, I'm the candidate. I think he was trying to paint himself as the alternative.
Right. And so last night he's on CNN because they're doing these town halls. Listeners maybe remember, former President Trump was on one of these town halls as well. And he was asked about this question about the former president and about January 6th.
Just to be clear, are you saying that a vote for Donald Trump is a vote against the Constitution?
When the president asserted that I had the right to overturn the election, I said today that I felt that he was asking me to choose between him and the Constitution. I chose the Constitution. I said today President Trump was wrong then, he's wrong now.
And, he was asked the same question here in Utah.
Right.
And he made it every bit as clear, like, I chose the Constitution. And, in fact, at that event he spoke at, he got a standing ovation at that moment.
Right.
So he's not shying away from that issue and may, in fact, be sort of putting some distance between himself and the sort of hardcore supporters of President Trump.
Right. And I also thought it was interesting. CNN's Dana Bash asked about whether he would pardon January 6 rioters.
Donald Trump says he is, quote, inclined to pardon many members of the mob who attacked the Capitol on January 6. Those people were, of course, part of the same mob who built gallows and chanted about wanting to hang you. Would you consider pardoning any of them?
You know, on the day of January 6th, I issued a tweet demanding that people leave the Capitol and end the violence. And I said that those that fail to do that should be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. And I continue to believe that today. We cannot ever allow what happened on January 6th to happen again in the heart of our democracy. And I'll stand by the decisions and the due process of court in our laws. And I have no interest or no intention of pardoning those that assaulted police officers or vandalized our Capitol. They need to be answerable to the law.
So, Leah, I think that we're seeing a pattern of questioning. I mean,
Right.
he is going to have to sort of account for or answer where he is on just about anything involving Donald Trump. In fact, right now, there's a lot of investigations going on, right?
That's
and so
right.
that was the next thing they asked him is, okay, there's a lot of investigations, particularly into the president. What are your impressions on those?
Now more than ever, we ought to be finding ways we could actually come
And
together.
sir, we're going to get
and
to
this
all
kind of this kind of action by the Department of Justice, I think, would only fuel further division in the country. And let me also say, I think it would also send a terrible message to the wider world. I hope the DOJ thinks better of it and resolves these issues without an indictment.
Sir, I just want to clarify. What you're saying is that if they believe he committed a crime, they should not go forward with an indictment?
Let me be clear that no one's above the law. But with regard to the unique circumstances here, look, I had no business having classified documents in my residence, and I took full responsibility for it. President Biden had no business having them in his residence from when he was vice president as well. And the same with former President Trump. We've got to find a way to move our country forward and restore confidence in equal treatment under the law in this country. We really do.
So I'm wondering, what do you think? So let me just push you a little bit, Derek, right? So if you're a Republican
Good thing no
in
one's
Utah,
listening while you're
that's
pushing
right.
over
Let me just
here.
push you politely. Elevated conversation,
Exactly.
right? So then they gave him a standing ovation around the Constitution when you said that he was here in Utah a little bit ago. Would they be cheering for the same thing here? Would Utah Republican voters who would be in a primary when Mike Pence is running against, the former president, are they going to feel as good about what his answer is right there on whether the president should be indicted?
Well, that's a good question because he's talking specifically about the documents,
Right.
Right, and that's it is really tricky. And you and I have talked about this a little on
Yeah.
KSL at night. I mean, it is odd for me to see how someone could have classified documents in their residence. I've worked in D.C. I've seen how generally these things are handled, and the way classified documents are distributed and then carried back. You don't inadvertently walk out of these secure locations with these kind of documents. So I think what he's saying is it's a systemic problem, and if you're going to get mad at one, you got to get mad at all. So let's fix the problem.
Right, and not have it be looking like in the middle of an election, we're trying to restore confidence, trying to be a world leader. Let's not have it look like a political witch hunt. I mean, I'm just a little suspicious, Derek. I'm just going to tell you, a kid in Massachusetts had these documents that he dumps on his Discord server. So
where did he get them?
Right. I'm not sure the former vice president, is wrong, that there's some systemic flaws, right, that needs to be addressed.
Exactly. And I'll tell you that the big question then about Trump came next, and that is, would you pardon Trump? And this is the question, or this is the response, sort of, that he gave to that answer.
If Donald Trump is convicted of a crime and you're elected president, would you pardon him?
Well, I don't want to speak about hypotheticals. I'm not sure I'm going to be elected president of the United States, but I believe we have a fighting chance. I really believe we do.
And if you are?
And I would hope, again, Dana, you're as persistent as ever. CNN is living up to its reputation. But look, there are real issues the American people are facing. And rather than talking about that, I want to talk about what the people here in Iowa are talking about, which is the failed policies of the Biden administration.
Oh, I think he's right. Don't you think? I mean, to a certain extent, if I'm running for office, and I want to be looking forward, right? I should not be answering questions about what I might do. I don't know, Derek. Tell me.
And when there's no indictment, there's a lot of issues that are have yet to be decided. So I think it's smart of him to say essentially, I'm gonna put that on hold.
Yeah, and there's no right answer. He's just gonna get in trouble.
Exactly. Right. All right. Well, and what's interesting is he also specifically divided himself or separated himself with the former president on a number of issues.
Yeah.
And like Social Security and immigration. And so it remains to be seen kind of what happens.
Yeah. So stay with us after the break. We'll be chatting about a very interesting, I think surprising decision handed down today from the Supreme Court about congressional redistricting.
Summer 2023 will be one to remember.
Mike Pence and Chris Christie set to enter the race.
Governor Cox is actively looking for trade away from China.
Brace for higher gas prices.
It's a summer to camp out on KSL. Tim and Amanda have breaking news, mornings 5 to 9. David Dujanovic and Boyd Matheson talk about the biggest stories during the day. And you get updates and Jeff Kaplan's Minute of News from 3 to 7 on the drive home. The summer of 2023 will be on KSL News Radio.
Dazzling decal on Daisy's Donuts window. Bold banner at Barry's Barbershop. Prominent poster at Penny's on Park Place.
This is your sign. Well, signs. To try Staples and see the difference. Get $15 off signs, banners, and posters when you spend $75 or more.
From Staples, and I couldn't miss it.
N617. Visit staplesconnect.com/printbig for details.
My milkshake brings all the boys to the yard, and they're like, it's better than yours.
Spilled your milkshake? Quick, the quicker picker upper. Bounty picks up spills quicker. And each sheet is 2 times more absorbent, so you can use less than the leading Ordinary brand. So you can get back to your milkshake.
My milkshake brings all the boys to the yard, and they're like, it's better than yours.
Bounty, the quicker picker upper.
Do you dream of a beautiful landscape, complete with colorful blooms to brighten your home throughout the seasons? Spring is the perfect time to create flower-filled garden beds or to adorn your front porch and backyard patio with gorgeous hanging baskets and grand container gardens. This is Brian with Olson's Greenhouse, and my family has been growing flowers with love and care for 80 years. That's a 4th-generation, local family business, growing plants and jobs right here in the mountain valleys of Utah. Whether you love bold, bright colors or calming classics, flowers grown by Olson's Greenhouse include something for everyone. So let's get to your local garden center and find the perfect flowers to create your dream landscape. And you'll be coming home to a yard bursting with blooms in no time. For inspiration on flower gardening, or just to find the closest garden center that carries flowers from the Olson's family, head on over to ogg.com for Olson's Greenhouse Gardens. That's ogg.com to dream big, dream bold, dream in color.
At aimyourdigital.com, we'll help you target the right audience, build your leads, and crush your quota. Take your business to the next level. Our digital marketing strategies help grow awareness of your product or service, all while building trust in your business. Our approach involves leveraging multiple tools and strategies to deliver exceptional results that are customized to your unique business needs. Don't wait to run out of sales leads. Keep your business growing. Get started with aimyourdigital.com today.
I switched to Boost Mobile and got a free Samsung Galaxy A23 5G phone. Want to know the best part?
It was free?
Nope.
The fact that it's on America's largest 5G networks?
Nope. It's the ding.
Oh yeah, love the ding.
Right? It's all about the ding. It's the dingarooski, the dingarone, the ring-a-ding-ding.
Unleash your power to save with Boost. Get a free Samsung Galaxy A23 5G phone when you switch. Boost Mobile. Unleash your power.
And the ding.
Limited time offer. New customers only. Available on select networks. 5G not available everywhere. One device per line. Tax excluded. Additional restrictions apply. See your local Boost Mobile store for details.
You trust us for news and information in your car. Now trust us at home. KSL News Radio is your window to the outside world, keeping you informed on the latest breaking news, weather, traffic, sports, and more. Listen on your Amazon Echo or Google Home device. Just say, Alexa, open KSL News Radio, or listen on the KSL News Radio app. Text the word app to 57500. KSL News Radio, Utah's all-day companion for news.
It's only a minute of news. How long could it take?
I do a lot of surfing late at night.
I'm looking at all my favorite internet sources, Wall Street Journals, New York Times. People throw me ideas, but when I sit down in the morning and it's time to write, it has to resonate with me. I have to have something to say about it. It is my Minute of News.
Jeff Kaplan's Afternoon News, 3 to 7 on KSL News Radio.
With the 3 things you need to know this hour, I'm Dan Bomas. First, a 16-year-old found the bodies of her parents in their home in Hiram this morning. Second, the road over Guardsman's Pass is finally opened after UDOT crews plowed their way through a mountain of snow. Third, President Biden hosting the UK's new prime minister at the White House this afternoon. Right now, 79 degrees, mostly cloudy in Salt Lake City. Back to Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Boyd Matheson divides rage from reason on Inside Sources.
Welcome back to Inside Sources. Today, I, Leah Murray, and my good friend Derek Brown are sitting in for Boyd Matheson, but we will try to keep dividing rage from reason.
Exactly.
And,
Keep the conversation
model.
elevated,
That's
as Boyd
right.
likes
We will
to say.
behave like Boyd would want us to. So, June is one of my favorite months, Derek, for many reasons. But one of them, because I'm a nerd, is that this is when Supreme Court cases are going to start coming down, right? So we're going to...
Or the big ones.
That's right.
Right. They save the biggies till June.
Probably because they've been working on them, right?
Exactly.
for months, and they have to write these opinions. They're going to go into case law, like forever, right? So today... Big court case. Supreme Court struck down Republican-drawn congressional districts in Alabama that civil rights activists there had said discriminated against black voters. And we are surprised, right, Derek, because we've got conservative Supreme Court Chief Justice John Roberts with this decision, and also conservative Supreme Court Justice Brett Kavanaugh.
Yeah, that's interesting.
In addition to the 3 liberal justices on the court. So interesting, right? My whole Twitter feed blew up like, this is really where our surprise that this happened.
And I love seeing Supreme Court cases where you don't have them drawn along sort of the traditional political or ideological lines, because that shows there's more going on. Now, when it comes to drawing maps, this is always a controversial issue. And let's just call it what it is. There are spoils of victory.
Right.
And the reality is, here in Utah, maps were drawn, and the congressional maps made it much more difficult for a Democrat to win at the congressional seat. And that's not unlike other states. Like Illinois, the Democrat legislature in Illinois drew their maps such that no Republican's probably ever going to win, a seat in Illinois.
For the rest of time.
Forever.
Right.
And so the question is that fair? Well, the Supreme Court has basically said, look, you can draw them how you want, but there are certain things you can't do. And I think today's court case is touching on one of those things you can't do.
So we've got with us Doug Spencer, Associate Professor of Law at the University of Colorado and an election law scholar who studies the role of prejudice and racial attitudes in voting rights. So what Derek just said, those things you were talking about party, this case was about race and black voters. Welcome to the show, Professor Spencer.
Hi, thanks, Leah and Derek. It's nice to be here.
So give us, first of all, correct anything that we've said is wrong, but give us the background or the context to this case and why it's such a big deal.
Yeah, I think it really is a big deal, and you've set it up really nicely. What's different about this case than what was going on in Utah and the redistricting commission, as you pointed out, is that this case is about race discrimination instead of partisan discrimination. And a really big difference between those two is that Congress passed a law in 1965, the Voting Rights Act, to specifically set out a framework for what you can and can't do when it comes to sorting people by race. And no such statute exists in the context of partisanship and party. And so today we have a Supreme Court, the majority opinion endorses the Voting Rights Act as enacted in 1965 and said states can't continue to ignore the rules of that act as Alabama tried to do this last redistricting cycle.
So, Professor, just to be clear, you mentioned that there are obviously the rules against discrimination based on race, but not necessarily on party. And so in politics, just because you can do something doesn't mean you necessarily should do it. But are you saying that as far as drawing maps, if you want to draw them in a partisan way to block out a particular, folks or an area that tends to have a centralized political party to weaken that party, that's totally permissible under federal law?
It's permissible under the U.S. Constitution and under federal law. There's nothing that prevents a state from, as you said, to the victor go the spoils of a winning coalition drawing districts to minimize the voice of its partisan opponents. There's nothing explicitly that prevents that.
Okay, because I'm not saying it should be done necessarily, but it does happen, and I think every state sees this, and there's always complaining and people saying it's unconstitutional. So I just want to make clear that that's not unconstitutional, but
right.
it also sometimes doesn't pass the smell test. And so that's the trick.
That's exactly right. And a state legislature could always step in and create standards. The federal Congress has never done so, and the U.S. Constitution doesn't create limits. But that doesn't stop a state from enacting a constitutional amendment or a redistricting commission or passing its own laws.
All right, Professor Spencer, go political with me for just a second. So we've got conservative Justice Roberts and conservative Justice Kavanaugh siding with our three liberal justices. Can you talk to us about, I feel like Roberts and Kavanaugh weren't siding with Sotomayor, Kagan, and Ketanji Brown Jackson, right? Jackson Brown, because of ideology. So tell us what their arguments were that saw us see conservatives voting with our liberal justices.
Yeah, I think the biggest surprise for me is Chief Justice Roberts, because he's been so skeptical of the Voting Rights Act since he was a lawyer in the Justice Department in the 1980s in the Reagan administration. But ultimately what draws them into the majority of this case is that this is a statute that Congress passed, and they both have a lot of deference for our political branches and are very skeptical about courts stepping in and telling our political branches what to do. And they also have more respect, I think, for the precedent of the Supreme Court than other conservative justices like Justice Thomas or Justice Alito. And they recognize that the Supreme Court has endorsed and upheld the Voting Rights Act in dozens and dozens of cases since it was enacted in 1965. And what they were asked to do in this case was basically to throw out all of those cases, and they were hesitant to do so.
So for those of you just tuning in, we have Professor Doug Spencer, who's an associate professor of law at the University of Colorado and someone who has studied this issue. And one of the things we haven't really dug into yet, Professor, is so what is it that the court actually said? They said this map or the drawing of the map is impermissible. And why is that? What is it that makes it such that, I mean, you mentioned earlier, they don't want to necessarily be telling other branches what to do. In this case, the judiciary did exactly that. Tell us why.
So the Voting Rights Act says that minority populations, these are race and ethnic minority groups, have the right to be represented in their legislatures in rough proportion to their population. And Alabama, this is a case challenging a map that was drawn for its congressional districts. Alabama has 7 members of Congress, so there were 7 districts to draw. The black population in Alabama is 27%. Alabama drew its districts in a way that afforded black voters an opportunity to elect their own candidates in 1 out of the 7 districts. And the complaint was that because the population was 27%, which is almost 2/7, that Alabama should have drawn a second opportunity district for black voters. The state of Alabama said, we're not going to do that, even though the Voting Rights Act says we probably should, but we don't agree with the Voting Rights Act. And they challenged that, and the Supreme Court took the case. And many of us observed, why would the Supreme Court take that case unless they wanted to overturn the Voting Rights Act, because the case was a very straightforward application. And what the Supreme Court did today was just affirm its commitment to the Voting Rights Act and told Alabama, you need to go back and draw a map that has 2 opportunity districts for black voters.
All right, Professor Spencer, we've got like a minute left. Can you tell us, I think the court's considering another case related to states' abilities enforcing federal election laws. When you expect that decision, what you think is going to happen there, given that you're surprised by what happened here, anything you're watching this month coming out of SCOTUS?
So that other case, Moore versus Harper, would give state legislatures a lot more authority to determine the rules of elections. Based on what we heard in oral arguments, it seems that they're very skeptical to give state legislatures a blank check, which is what they've been asked to do. But also the case arose in North Carolina from a state Supreme Court opinion that has since been overturned. So I actually expect that opinion to be dismissed as moot or to be very, very, very limited because the ultimate controversy has disappeared since they first heard that case.
Fantastic. All right, Professor Doug Spencer, University of Colorado. Thank you for joining us on Inside Sources.
Thank you for having me.
Stay with us. Next, we've got someone in studio who I won't say who it is, but let's say it's someone who has not gotten much sleep the last week, and there's a good reason for that.
KSL FM Midvale, KSL Salt Lake City. Listen on the KSL News Radio app and in your car at 102.7 FM. KSL News Radio, your all-day companion for news.
It's 2 o'clock at KSL News Radio. I'm Dan Bomas. KSL's top story this hour. Candidates are officially announcing their plans to run to fill the seat of Congressman Chris Stewart. Republicans Greg Hughes, Bruce Huff, Becky Edwards have all now said as much. On the Democrat side, State Senator Kathleen Reeby says she's in.
The seats have been gerrymandered, and our vote has been the Democratic vote, and the people of Salt Lake City feel compromised by what's happened. And I think that this is a race that's doable, and I think that I have a strong shot.
Candidates can file any time between today and next Wednesday. The man accused of killing 2 people in a road rage incident last Sunday in Eagle Mountain turned himself into the Utah County Sheriff's Office. He's facing charges, 2 second-degree felony counts of manslaughter, along with reckless driving. Our top national story this hour from ABC News. President Biden says he and British Prime Minister Rishi Sunak will work together on the safety of artificial intelligence. Mr. Biden calling AI a historic technological advancement that poses both benefits and risks.
It is staggering. You have some of these leaders in the industry talking about how they're concerned whether the machine will be able to begin to think for itself.
And some top leaders in the tech industry have been warning about the hazards of AI and urging government regulation. Your money at this moment, the Dow Jones average up 168 points on the day right now. The NASDAQ is up 133 points. And our KSL weather looks like a repeating pattern. Thunderstorms in the afternoon. That's next. KSL News Time 2:01.
Start your days with knowledgeable, friendly voices telling you about the latest news and weather out there.
Hi, this is Tim Hughes and Amanda Dixon.
In the business of waking you up each morning from 5 to 9.
On KSL News Radio.
Register for breaking news updates by texting the word news to the Cypress Credit Union KSL text line at 57500.
This is Jeff Kaplan, and I am a blue razzmatazz guy. Now, I know maybe you're all about Simply Mango or maybe Tiger's Blood. No judgment, but when it comes to the highly personal decision of your favorite Frazzle flavor, blue razzmatazz is my jam. Well, really, it's my slushie. Frazzle, in case you don't know, is a delicious, refreshing slushie sold at convenience stores. Frazzle got its start here in Utah 20 years ago, and now you find Frazzle machines at convenience stores from coast to coast. If you've never tried Frazzle, or even if you're already a fan like me, get one free on Free Frazzle Friday, every Friday through June at participating locations. They're celebrating Free Frazzle Friday at Holiday Oil, Maverick, Top Stop, and many other convenience stores. Limit 1 per person, but load up the car, bring the kids. Everybody gets a 12-ounce Frazzle free. For locations and more, get the Frazzle app or go to freefrazzlefriday.com. Maybe you love Georgia Peach or Tangerango. You're going to love the Frazzle flavors.
This is Jeff Stout with Fink and McGregor Mortgages Made Simple. FHA has announced a significant reduction in mortgage insurance rates. This can be a game changer for some people. FHA rates are typically lower than conventional mortgage rates. Combine this with lower mortgage insurance and FHA is worth a look. FHA is especially attractive for low down payment, cash out, or credit issues. You don't have to be a first-time home buyer, and you can refinance into or out of an FHA loan. Another attractive feature of an FHA loan is the ability to streamline refinance when rates come down. No appraisal needed, limited documentation, and low cost helps you lower your payment with minimal fuss. Call us today. Fink and McGregor Mortgages Made Simple, 801-264-9494. That's 264-9494. Or on the web at finkmcgregor.com. NMLS 289115.
June 15th is Elder Abuse Awareness Day, and the Utah Department of Health and Human Services is hosting a virtual event from 10 to noon. Text SENIOR to 57500 to register.
Traffic and weather together brought to you by Granite Credit Union, helping members since 1935. Here's Ricky Meese.
We have an accident in Murray. It's going to be on the northbound side of I-15, just past the I-215 junction. And even though we thought it was out of traffic, it looks like it is blocking a few lanes of traffic in the center and right, and we're seeing delays almost to 90th South. A crash on the southbound side of I-15 in Utah County at 5th East American Fork also causing some delays. Make Father's Day easy and get the best gift ever, a blanket or robe from Minky Couture. Shop online at minkycouture.com or any Minky store. Best gift ever, Minky Couture. Ricky Meese in the KSL Traffic Center.
KSL weather. The pattern of afternoon thunderstorms continues through the weekend and into next week. We've got clouds moving in right now. We've heard some thunder outside Broadcast House. Right now, it's 76 degrees at KSL News Radio, 102.7 FM, 1160 AM, and KSLNewsRadio.com. Your all-day companion for news.
Inside Sources. Inside Sources. America's voice of reason. Boyd Matheson on Utah's home for elevated conversation. Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
All right, welcome to the second hour of Inside Sources. It is great to be with you. I am Derek Brown with my good friend and co-host today, Leah Murray. We're filling in for Boyd.
We are, and we're hoping to also be America's voice of reason when we chat for the next hour.
Exactly. As Boyd likes to say, he encourages us to dig a little deeper, think a little bigger, explore a little wider, and challenge our assumptions and disagree a little better.
Yeah.
So,
and I think we do that well.
I think so.
Yeah.
I think so. And if we don't, they won't invite us back.
That's right.
So,
Someone will tell us.
It's a win-win. All right. We have in studio a good friend of ours and somebody who hasn't slept much and is probably very caffeinated. And we'll explain why. This is Robert Axon, who is the chairman of the Utah Republican Party, arguably the most thankless job in the state. Chairman Axon.
Hey, good to be with you guys. Appreciate it.
Yeah,
Thanks
I think
for being here.
The first thing I asked him when he walked in was, "Are you regretting all of your life choices?" And he just smiled at me.
Well, these are the moments. I mean, there's a lot of interest and things you do that are very interesting. But about a week or a week and a half ago, your life was thrown into disarray with a member of Congress stepping down. So explain to us a little bit about what this means. I mean, we're talking about general municipal elections, and we've talked a lot about that this morning. But this has a huge implication for the Republican Party because you now have a lot of jobs and responsibilities that you have to kind of fit in the cracks. So tell us about what that looks like.
So you look, last week when we heard from Congressman Stewart that he was looking to resign, we knew based off of state law and as well as the need to have a voice and a vote back in Washington, D.C., that we would all need to really get things in order very quickly. Fortunately, the state has a pretty clear path on how to do that. As we looked at that over the last week, it became apparent that when you pass a law back in 2020 that was looking to the future of maybe someday this would be needed, you with very good intentions, put kind of a framework in place. Now when it's coming to practice, we realize there's some particulars that were not accounted for. And so this is where the governor needed to call the legislature into a special session. They will be doing that next week to make some adjustments and to appropriate the funds necessary to conduct the election. And so I'm very grateful that they will be doing that. As it pertains to the party, there are many things that are outside of my control. I can't tell you since last night when the governor issued his proclamations and kind of the dates were laid out clearly and made public. I've had countless phone calls of folks wanting to know, so when is the party going to be hosting its election on the portion that we provide, which is a convention for the CD2 delegates. I don't have that date specific yet that I can announce, but it will be coming in very short order. We're trying to work through a number of considerations. And what I'm trying to do is balance, of course, the needs of the party, and that is to vet and conduct a process that's fair and transparent, but also take into account the need for delegates and Republicans at large across the state, but especially there in that district, to know that they can be engaged in the process. And so I want to make sure that we have a good turnout and participation.
And I also just figured out, I think, this morning. So I want to be clear, all of this makes me smile. Like, not that your life is hard, but
smiling
I
at Robert's expense.
No, I beg your pardon. What I mean is that, wow, it's really complicated. Because I legit just thought, oh, he will step down and the delegates from CD2 will pick the replacement. Like, I just totally thought that's how he would do it, right? I wasn't really tracking all the rules. So, but I only just figured out this morning that there's even a signature gathering phase. So I was like, oh, we're like all in on all the things in a really short order.
So think about this first and foremost, and this is important for everybody to understand, and I think this is a good civics lesson 101. The role of being a member of the House of Representatives is a constitutionally clearly, I mean, it's Article 1, right? So it's a constitutionally dictated position, but it's the only position in our Constitution that there is no means to replace that individual through appointment or anything else but by election. And I'm grateful for that. I'm grateful that our founders focused on the need to have an accountable body of our government that was most accountable to all of us. And so because of that, we have to conduct an election. The party can't just say, oh, well, here's our pick to fill the remainder of Congressman Stewart's seat. We need to face the electorate and go through that process. Then second to that is state law. And in state law, they allow for the nomination process of the parties to go through that dual path. And this gets back to the SB 54 discussions we've had over the last decade. You have what would be the delegate or convention path, which I will help facilitate. And then you will have the signature path, which the individual candidates will need to go and secure and verify that threshold of signatures within the 2nd Congressional District in order to gain access to the primary ballot.
Many of which may do both.
Yep, they absolutely could. You could have a candidate that decides to go through one path or the other or through both, and I would imagine quite a few will look at the doing both, but that's up to them to decide.
Now, can I ask the hard question?
Oh, please.
Oh, well,
do.
there's all sorts of hard questions we can ask. Where? I mean, because the 2nd Congressional District, it's Davis County and all the way down to Washington County,
Yeah,
right?
this is a big district.
This is
very
huge. So it's
very
not
big
like, well,
district.
you pick something right in the middle. Well, right in the middle is what, like Richfield?
Yeah,
I mean, so
Richfield is probably one of the closest in the middle. I'll tell you, with the exception of a couple of states who have such low population that they only have one congressional seat for the entirety of the state. So with the exception of those states like Alaska and Wyoming, I believe that this congressional district, as well as Congressman Curtis's, are two of the 3 or 4 largest geographic congressional districts in the entire United States. And so when you look at that, it becomes very complex. And this is where I'm going to have to thread the needle on this. The window of time that I will have to conduct the convention, it may seem big on surface that there's a handful of days. But keep in mind, if it's a work day and people are getting out of work around 5 o'clock, and this process is going to take between 3 and more likely closer to 4 hours, I can't have them traveling all the way from St. George up to Salt Lake or all the way from Salt Lake down to St. George. There's just not enough time unless we want to conduct an election at 11 p.m. at night through 3 in the morning, which I don't think we do. So we really have to go towards the weekends.
Can I ask you a question? And maybe there's a really obvious answer that I'm just not seeing, but you just don't want to Zoom this convention? Because I feel like what you just said, it's a huge district. We all learned during COVID how to get on a Zoom, and I don't know, it could be Skype or, I'm not trying to be like promoting Zoom, but is there any option for that, or is that outside of your rules to even float that?
Technically, there would be the ability to facilitate that. Then there becomes 2 questions. One is logistical. It is a very complex process to do that remotely and to do it through technological means. That one's not as concerning to me. The other consideration that is a concern to me is the practical, and really how engaging of a process is it to have a voter or a delegate look that candidate in the eye, talk to them person to person instead of just watching a video or seeing a Zoom call. And I believe that as Americans, we all need to step up. And when we look at how much time is being asked of us, so for example, caucus night, some folks say, caucus night, that takes me 2 hours. In my mind, 2 hours every 2 years is a pretty low bar and a pretty small price to pay for all the freedoms that I get here in this country. And so I want to facilitate a process that engages people. And it might be a delegate who's relatively new to the process, that this is the fire that they need, that motivates them to be more engaged, to run for city council or whatever it may be. That we should always lean into as Americans.
Yeah. Exactly. Oh, I like that answer. That was good.
It is. And I don't think people... I appreciate the level of complexity. In fact, when I served as the party chair, there was, for a number of reasons that I just don't have time to go into, we had to move the primary. Did you remember that?
And, one big reason, COVID.
Well, there's that too. But I mean, the number of things, I sort of jokingly said to the clerks as a group, well, how hard can it be? And they went, oh my goodness. And they showed me this list of all, it's basically, here's the 73 things that have to be done and come into play for this to work out. So you, as the chairman of the Republican Party, Rob, you have to deal with that.
Yep.
You have to deal with party bylaws. You have to deal with both federal and state law.
Correct.
And somehow thread the needle with all of them. So in other words, you have a Herculean task that is darn near impossible, which is why they pay you the big bucks.
Oh, absolutely.
And by big
I'm
bucks,
excited
I
for
mean
those.
no bucks
Yeah,
at
it's
all.
a volunteer job, but you're still smiling, so I'm impressed.
Well, and here's the reason. We're lucky to live in this country. And I'll get back to that again. Like this entire process where we get to pick the men and women who stand up and represent us, that's something that we should always be grateful for and allow it to dictate not only our enthusiasm to solve complex issues like we are now, but also maybe give us patience with people when we disagree with them or when it's not exactly the way that we want it to go.
Yeah, oh my goodness. Robert Axon, tired but smiling, Utah Republican Party Chair. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it.
We've got more Inside Sources coming up after the break.
Right on cue for summer. OPEC plans to cut oil production. Gas prices are headed up.
It could drive up prices for other goods.
Whether you're planning a staycation or a day trip, start your summer here. Get updates on traffic out of town, gas prices, and everything you need to know. Listen each day this summer, mornings and afternoons, to KSL News Radio.
Want to annihilate payroll problems? Wipe them out with Paycom. Paycom torches timesheet errors like a flamethrower. Whoa! Obliterates overtime blunders like a wrecking ball. Holy mackerel! And PTO problems? Paycom leaves them pulverized. Wow! Because with Paycom, employees do their own payroll right in the Paycom app. They find and fix errors before payroll submission, so HR can tackle important stuff, like performance incentives and retaining top producers, so your people can crush their goals. Oops! And with Paycom, employees enter and manage their own HR info, like onboarding, tax setup, and benefits enrollment. It's all in one powerful software with ironclad security. Stop doing that! Sick of HR and payroll headaches? Don't just eliminate them. Demolish them at paycom.com.
Emergency traffic on KSL News Radio, brought to you by Granite Credit Union, helping members since 1935. Well, northbound I-15 right through the heart of the valley, all jammed up. We had an accident reported after the South Interchange in Murray, but these delays, they're unusual, and we have no other accident reported. They are slow and go and stop and go speeds from 90th South all the way up to the I-80 201 junction. Ricky Meese in the KSL Traffic Center.
Who will dare to find a new way to think about energy? One that connects our lives like never before and creates a world where we can breathe easy. NewScale dared by making 24/7 carbon-free energy a reality with our Voyager SMR power plants. Let's see how bright the future can be when cleaner, safer energy is available to all. NewScale. Power to the world. Power for all humankind. Discover the future of energy at newscalepower.com.
By texting 64,000, you agree to receive recurring automated marketing messages from Babbel. Message and data rates may apply. No purchase required. Terms apply. Available at babbel.com/TNC.
I always wanted to learn Spanish, but I never thought I'd have the time. Then I discovered Babbel.
Babbel's lessons are fun. They only take like 10 or 15 minutes, and in 3 weeks, you're starting to speak another language.
Babbel's lessons are voiced by native speakers, so you get the pronunciation just right.
If you want to learn a language, there's no better way than
Babbel.
Text radio to 64,000 to try Babbel for free. Text radio to 64,000.
Our state's children face a serious threat from the vaping industry. But thanks to state leaders and the Utah Health Department, Utah established the strictest nicotine standards for vaping in the United States to protect our kids. However, the vaping industry sued, claiming their sales and profits are down. Now they're pushing the health department to hand control of vaping regulations to the federal government. We can't allow that to happen. The proposed change would automatically increase nicotine levels in vape pens and reintroduce fruity flavors that entice our kids back into Utah convenience stores. Visit stopkidsvaping.com today and make your voice heard. Utah should maintain state control, preserve our 3% nicotine limitations, and prevent vaping flavors from returning to Utah convenience stores. Together, we can secure a better future for our children. Join us at stopkidsvaping.com and tell the health department, protect our kids.
Paid for by Prosperous Utah Communities.
All the talks we've had over the years, including what you've told me about not using alcohol and other drugs,
they stick with me. And believe it or not, they really do make a difference, especially at times that matter most.
Hey, want a drink?
No thanks, I'm good. So thank you, Dad, for talking and preparing me for what's ahead.
Thank you for talking.
For more information about talking with your kids about underage use of alcohol and other drugs, visit underagedrinking.samhsa.gov.
With the 3 things you need to know this hour, I'm Dan Bomas. First, the candidates are starting to line up for both parties in Utah's 2nd Congressional District. Second, the man suspected in a crash that killed 2 people in Eagle Mountain has turned himself into police. Third, President Biden and the British Prime Minister were talking about artificial intelligence at the White House today. Right now, 79 degrees, mostly cloudy in Salt Lake City. And back to Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Boyd Matheson divides rage from reason on Inside Sources.
Welcome back to Inside Sources. You're here with me, Leah Murray, and my good friend Derek Brown as we chatted about all the interesting things that are happening. Oh my gosh.
And with interesting people who are making them happen or having to
fabulous.
react to them.
Right. So I want to kind of like pivot our conversation here, Derek, to go national a little bit. I saw a poll that from News Nation and Decision Desk HQ polling voters, and they've got in this data 49% saying they would consider a third-party candidate if it's a Trump-Biden race. What do you think?
You know what? I think there is just this collective panic, I think, in America of having just a redux of 2020, going through that all again. Although the interesting thing is, the more the polling comes out and we keep thinking, okay, something's going to shift, it doesn't shift. It still looks like from the Republican standpoint, Donald Trump has the advantage. And with more and more people jumping into the Republican side, I mean, I think that further solidifies him, right? Because he has a base, and then you have all these others who are jumping in that I think, you know, they may have their individual constituencies, but none as large as his. So why don't we talk a little bit about who that is and what that looks like?
Yeah, so we've got with us today Nathaniel Rakich, who is the Senior Elections Analyst at 538. Welcome to the show, Nathaniel.
Hey, guys. Thank you.
So my first question, as an avid fan of 538 and your podcast, and maybe you don't want to answer this, is that a good use of polling? Like, so when I started and I said, News Nation, blah, 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 am I doing it right or should I be better? Teach me.
I'm afraid that is not a very good use of polling.
That's okay. Tell us why. Tell us why.
So, you know, the issue is that, you know, it's all nice and well for everybody to say, you know, oh, I would like a third-party candidate, but people don't agree on what that third-party candidate is, right? Some people might be conservatives who don't love Donald Trump. They're looking for someone who isn't Trumpy but is conservative. You might have some Democrats who think Biden is too old or not progressive enough. They're looking for progressive. There might be some people who are looking for a true moderate, someone in the middle of the road. And so that 49% really kind of starts to break down at that point. And then, you know, you just have the fact that, you know, you're going to have two very powerful parties, the Democratic Party and the Republican Party. They've been the dominant parties in this country for 150 years. They're the big names on the ballot. Nobody wants their vote to go to waste. So even at the beginning of the campaign, if, you know, you have maybe an independent candidate who's polling, say, 20% in the polls, as it gets closer and closer to Election Day, you always see in the polls that person always loses support as people kind of chicken out, if you will. And then, you know, they end up getting something like 5% or whatever. So, you know, there is definitely dissatisfaction with Biden and Trump. I don't want to minimize that. But the odds that a third-party candidate will succeed or even get a meaningful share of the vote are very low.
And to some degree that this is also a money game. And one of the things, I mean, Nathaniel, I was one of the RNC, one of the 3 votes here in Utah as the chair for one of the elections right after 2020 when they elected their new leadership when Ronna McDaniel was reelected. And it became really clear to me that Donald Trump still had the control of the fundraising levers in the party. And I'm assuming for Biden, it's the same thing. And so the ability for any of these candidates to sort of leapfrog and grab that nomination seems just almost impossible. And so I think in light of that, I think also a third party, just it might be interesting to talk about, but not necessarily anything that realistically could happen.
Yeah, absolutely. You just get so many advantages, within and speaking just about the primaries now, when you are the incumbent president, obviously, the DNC is never going to sanction even a debate. They're not going to let any of Biden's challengers debate Biden because he's their guy. And on the Republican side, obviously, you have a debate, but Donald Trump is still, he's an ex-president, so he has a lot of those same advantages, like you mentioned, the money, the name recognition, the loyalty that he's built up over 4 years, or over his 4 years in office.
All right, so talk to us. Doing polling well, so do it better than I did, Nathaniel. Who is polling the best on the Republican side? And is there anybody, I love what you just said, they're not even going to let him debate, which I get why they wouldn't let Biden debate, but who maybe is polling well over on the Democratic side?
Yeah, well, I can knock out the Democrats first. So, Biden obviously is polling the best. He's, at like 60 or 70%. You do have kind of a sizable protest vote in terms of Robert F. Kennedy Jr., who is RFK's son, obviously, and also Marianne Williamson. RFK has been getting as many as like 20% in some polls. That said, a lot of Democrats just don't know who he is, and they see the name Kennedy, and they're like, oh, I like the Kennedys, and they just pick him. He has a lot of more extreme fringe views, like he's very skeptical of vaccines. He's been sympathetic to Russia, for example. So, in the event that, they're actually kind of getting down on the campaign trail and Democrats learn about his stances, I think that support's going to go down. On the Republican side, it is a bit more competitive. Donald Trump, in our 538 polling average, is at 54% nationally, which isn't quite as high as Biden, but it's still obviously a strong position. It's a majority of voters. Ron DeSantis is around 21%. So, he's in a kind of a position where he's within striking distance. If Donald Trump were to collapse, let's say he gets, indicted again, and maybe Republican voters decide, or Republican elites decide that he's kind of too much trouble, too much baggage, and they decide to cast him aside, then Ron DeSantis is well positioned to take advantage of that. A lot of Republicans who like Donald Trump also like Ron DeSantis, so it wouldn't be a huge shift for them to go over from Trump to DeSantis. But again, Donald Trump has been the standard bearer of the Republican Party for, 7 years now. They haven't abandoned him yet, despite numerous scandals. So I think the smart money is that they're going to stick with him.
So Nathaniel, talk to us a moment about Mike Pence. We just talked about him. There was a CNN town hall about him. He was actually here in Utah about a month ago. Does he, is there any chance that he's able to be sort of the third pick, or is it just, it just seems kind of like a lackluster campaign, and to me, it strikes me as someone without a natural constituency, because the folks that love Donald Trump are not happy with him because of his, the things he said about the president, and those who don't like the president really don't like Mike Pence either, because he was part of that administration. So, does he have a shot at all?
Yeah, I think you're exactly right. I don't want to say that he has zero shot, but it's definitely a very long shot. He's the alternative to the alternative, right? So he's not only betting that Donald Trump is going to collapse, but he also needs Ron DeSantis to collapse. And so currently he's polling at 5%, which obviously is not very strong. And it's particularly bad when you consider that this isn't kind of some maybe fresh face in the party, somebody who people haven't heard of, but who has potential to grow, somebody like Barack Obama for Democrats in 2008, right? This is somebody who was vice president. Republicans know who he is, and they've basically decided they don't like him, or at least they're lukewarm about him. And this, of course, is because he broke with Donald Trump after January 6th by refusing to overturn the 2020 election. And so, yeah, basically, there is this pool of Republicans, about 75% of them, who support either Trump or DeSantis. Those Republicans have an appetite for kind of a more pugnacious brand of conservatism, and I think those people maybe are flexible between Trump and DeSantis, but I think it's a little harder for them to go with someone more mild-mannered like Pence.
All right, Nathaniel, so we know, right, I hear you, and we are totally fully expecting who's going to be the nominees, but are there any other names or underdogs that you're kind of tracking or paying attention to?
Yeah, I think, I think anybody other than Trump and maybe DeSantis are unlikely to be the Republican nominee. But two names, that I'll mention just as, maybe they'll have a bit of a moment. There'll be a little dark horse at some point in the campaign. I think Senator Tim Scott of South Carolina has a lot of potential. He's got $20 million in the bank. You were mentioning the money earlier. That cash can go, pretty far. He's got a compelling life story. He's the only black Republican in the Senate. And I think a lot of Republicans wouldn't mind nominating a black man to show, kind of prove to Democrats that they're not a racist party as they've been accused of being. And then I also think that North Dakota Governor Doug Burgum is an interesting choice. He's a businessman, but he also has political experience. He's coming in. He's one of these people who I mentioned before who's coming in with basically no national profile. His name recognition is something only like 20% nationally, but he is independently wealthy. He started a software company that he sold to Microsoft for $1 billion. So he's another person who can pour in a lot of money into his campaign. And, I wouldn't be surprised to, see him rise in the polls. Now, of course, getting to 10% is maybe easy if you spend a few $1 million, but getting to 50% being Donald Trump, that's going to be hard.
Exactly. All right.
Nathaniel Rakik, Senior Elections Analyst at 538. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you.
Coming up after the break, fallout continues after Ukrainian dam was heavily damaged this week from an explosion. Might be putting a strain on Russia's relationship with China. Why? We'll find out next.
It's 2:30 at KSL News Radio. I'm Dan Bomas. KSL's top story this hour. We have some breaking news out of Holiday. A unified police officer who spotted three teenagers with multiple pride flags in their vehicle in the Mill Creek area has helped to break a case. Now 25 missing pride flags have been recovered. All but 3 have been returned to their owners. The case is being referred to juvenile court, where they'll decide what charges will be filed. Officers say this case is related to a similar series of thefts in Sandy. Boaters starting to get out on Utah's lakes and reservoirs with temperatures in the 80s. The Utah Division of Outdoor Recreation, though, is reminding everyone about the required safety items needed on that boat.
What the law requires is anyone 12 years and under to have a life jacket on their body, wearing it, properly fastened and fitted.
Utah Division of Outdoor Recreation's Steve Bullock tells David Dejanovic there must also be a life jacket in the boat for every adult on board. He says anyone floating a river or stream in Utah must also be wearing a life jacket, according to the law. The Salt Lake County Clerk's Office says it takes 13 weeks right now to get a passport through a routine application. That's assuming there are no snags in the process. On the floor of the U.S. Senate, Senator Mitt Romney is speaking out about chronic passport renewal delays.
The Mountain West region, and particularly Salt Lake City, is in what I'll call a passport service desert. The nearest passport agencies which are required for in-person visits are some 8 hours away.
Romney is calling on the State Department to open a passport agency in Salt Lake City. Your money at this moment, the Dow Jones average closing trading today, 168 points in the green. The NASDAQ also up 133 points on the day. And our KSL weather, the thunderstorms have arrived for the afternoon. That's next. KSL News Time, 2:32.
This summer, the political season heats up.
By August, it'll be time for debates. Can you believe it?
We're planning coverage of the real issues, the important stories that impact how we live.
Listen each morning from 5 to 9 on KSL News Radio.
Make the most of your summer plans with triple rewards from Cyprus Credit Union. This June and July, use your Cyprus Rewards card to earn triple points for every dollar you spend on gas and travel. That's triple the points for hotels, flights, at the gas pump, and more. For more information or to apply for your card, visit cypruscu.com today.
Cyprus Credit Union. Your future is our future.
Equal Opportunity Lender.
Yeah, I'm so stressed. Our business is growing. We've got people all over now.
Ooma.
What is that? Meditation?
I'm recommending the Ooma cloud phone system with auto attendant and more than 50 features.
Ooma?
Yep, switching to Ooma is a cinch. Just $24.95 per month per user, plus taxes and fees.
Ooma.
Now you're feeling it. Find small business calm at ooma.com/radio. That's OOMA.com/radio.
Here at the Almond Joy Factory, where tropical vibes abound, we use soft, fresh-tasting coconut.
The crunchiest almonds and delicious chocolate candy.
Ah, but do you know what our most important ingredient is? Sometimes you feel like a nut.
Sometimes you don't.
Almond Joy's got nuts and something even way better than that. Yes, Almond Joy is made with almonds and joy.
Mountain Star Healthcare's Harriman Emergency Center is now open. Be seen fast at the Harriman ER, located just off Mountain View Corridor and 134th South in Harriman.
Traffic and weather together brought to you by Granite Credit Union, helping members since 1935. Here's Ricky Meese.
And we do have lingering delays from earlier emergency traffic on I-15 northbound in Salt Lake County. Now, the speeds are improving, delays are breaking up, but it is still bogged down from 90th South all the way to the 6th South exit in downtown. But again, speeds are improving. Rain coming through, hitting the roads on the west side, particularly I-80, Bangerter Highway, and the 21st South Freeway, as well as the West Belt. And we do have an accident on SR 201 going eastbound just after Redwood Road. The Utah Symphony's Deer Valley Music Festival in Park City features Ben Folds, Leanne Rimes, the Beach Boys, and more. June 30th through August 4th in Park City at DeerValleyMusicFestival.org. Ricky Meeson, the KSL Traffic Center.
KSL weather, that pattern of afternoon thunderstorms continues through the weekend and into next week. Right now we've got a thunderstorm and 74 degrees at KSL News Radio, 102.7 FM, 1160 AM, and KSLNewsRadio.com. Your all-day companion for news.
Inside Sources. Inside Sources. America's voice of reason. Boyd Matheson on Utah's home for elevated conversation. Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
We have with us Mark Toth, economist, entrepreneur, and former board member of the World Trade Center St. Louis, to have a conversation about what's going on in Ukraine. So I think, Mark, for the first thing I want to ask you is, for our listeners who may not have been paying attention the last couple of days, what is happening in Ukraine with their dam?
Quite a bit. It's gone. At least a major one that's on the river Dnipro in the Zaporizhzhia Oblast. And while there's some technical doubt as to who did it, it's clear. The Russians did it. The Russians have controlled that dam since, near the beginning of the war. And by my eye, I have some commercial real estate background, so I've dealt with engineers and structural types. It was an implosion. So it came from within inside, and clearly the Russians were controlling the inside of the structure. The other damage, which there's been some speculation about, is basically water damage. People are like, well, how did those things move, further down the dam? But that was just the force of the water taking them. So, huge incident. And, while the speculation continues as to who caused it, I think that's just, for people to dot their I's and cross their T's. It's clear to me that the Russians did it.
So, Mark, one of the interesting things here is you would think that Russia, if in fact they were the ones responsible for this, would have provided some notice, right, to their troops, because I was reading that apparently one news article said that the Kremlin's own troops, and I'm quoting now, the Kremlin's own troops were washed away, their trenches flooded, accommodation inundated, and as they ran in the open to save themselves, Ukrainian forces rained death down upon them from the opposite bank of the river. So either the right hand doesn't know what the left hand's doing, or this seems like just a terrible blunder on the Russians' part, because rather than letting their troops know, hey, this is coming, get out, it sounds like they lost a lot of Russian lives, in addition to just the ecological disaster that's going to take place in that area.
Right. I mean, you're spot on, Derek. There's a couple things going on there. The first is that Russia does not value the lives of its troops. This is something that we've seen going all the way back to World War II. They basically are cannon fodder in the minds of their commanding generals. So it's not surprising that the Russian troops were caught there. It's to be expected, because in their minds, and again, it's foolish thinking, in their minds, well, we can catch the Ukrainians off guard, and so what if it kills a bunch of our guys that, are pre-positioned there? But there's just so much more that's problematic with what their decision was. It's one thing to blow it, even though it's still a war crime to do it in the way that they did it, but they did it pre any massive movement of Ukrainian troops. So to do it as prematurely as they did had no real value and has now created ecological and water issues for them in Crimea itself. It's just foolish. The other thing that's going on is, in terms of the reactions that you were reading about from the Russian soldiers, is another article that John and I had written about the Ukrainians, and we wrote this actually in the Messenger. The Ukrainians are coming. The Ukrainians are coming. I'm sorry, Colonel John Sweet, who I co-write with. We wrote this piece. The Russians right now are seeing Ukrainians everywhere. They're like the boogeyman that the minute, any of these conscripts, these very poorly trained soldiers, see any Ukrainians, you'd think it's, Genghis Khan's army coming at them. So you've got those two factors coming into play here.
So, Mark, I appreciate very much you mentioning Jonathan Sweet, who you write with, because we're looking at your article from today. So I want to just pivot to that, if that's okay with you.
Sure.
You're talking about, so there's ecological impacts and there's like strategic reasons you may or may not have done like they did with the dam. But you've got a really interesting piece about what this does with the relationship with China. So can you just talk us through that?
Sure. I think in the scheme of things, and again, it's hard to know for sure, but I think in the scheme of things with Chinese President Xi Jinping, is he would have preferred none of this to happen to begin with, but it did. And so given that it's ongoing, he's kind of viewed to date Putin as a useful idiot, on several levels. Putin can weaken the West in advance of any machinations that he might have, military ones on Taiwan down the road, as well as use Russia as a cheap gas station, to get his oil and energy needs. And it's kind of ironic because several years back, Putin himself said proudly when he was announcing the high-tech initiatives that Russia was going to be embarking upon, that Russia was no longer going to be a gas station. Well, the net effect of his wars, that's what he's turned the country's economy into.
So what's interesting now is kind of where this goes. And Mark, one of the things you mentioned is that Xi's patience with Putin is likely nearing an end. So talk to us about that. I mean, do you think this is creating a rift between those two leaders that in theory could benefit the West, or where does this go?
Yeah, I think you've got to think of Xi and despite all the bellicosity coming out of that country, they're still technicians at heart. And the core of their economic plan, their master plan to rule the world, if you will, is their Belt and Road Initiative, what's commonly known as BRI. And there are some estimates by economists that's going to be up to 7 trillion, maybe even 8 trillion in total value. And that extends all the way from China, that's creating green technology roads, kind of a modern version, if you will, of the Silk Road that once connected China to, medieval and Europe. And that's at risk now. Putin's putting that at risk. It's one thing to be fighting in Ukraine. It's another thing to be creating ecological disasters that is going to get all of Europe upset with him, for backing Putin. So from that standpoint, they've got a lot on the table. The EU itself is a major trading partner with China. The EU exports 8% and imports 20% of its own products from China. That's a market, Beijing can't lose. So they are nearing an end. And I think these ecological tipping points, like what we've seen with the Kakhovka Dam there, on the Dnipro being blown up, I think that's going to cause a rupture sooner than later.
All right, so Mark, in the last minute that we have, just pivoting back to Ukraine, what are you expecting to see? What are you watching for? Are there any signs of Ukraine's counteroffensive? Like, what are we looking for there?
Yeah, I think we're still in the probing phase, but probing with force. I don't think, I know there's a lot of reporting out. I don't believe, and John and I talked about this before I got on I don't believe that what we're seeing yet is a full-on counteroffensive. And the reason we say that and conclude that, for instance, there's a video circulating today that the Russians are touting of a major pushback, of the counteroffensive, but it was only company size. We're talking 100 men. There were 2 Leopards. There was a couple of APCs, probably M113s, and maybe 100 men in total surrounding that. What we're not seeing that you would expect to see in a large-scale counteroffensive is, air defense, air operations, supporting artillery, deep strikes coming in over their heads to clear the way, along with engineers who, are clearing pathways and the like. What we saw was basically a probe, a small-sized company testing Russian defenses to see where the strengths, where the weaknesses are, where they can break through, and what they should avoid and go around.
Fantastic. Well, we thank you, Mark. We appreciate you joining us. We've had Mark Toth, who wrote a fantastic piece today in The Hill, specifically about Ukraine, China, and this ecological disaster that's taking place with the dam that has been blown up. So thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it both, Leah and Derek.
All right, so Derek has got feelings about passports, and we're going to get into it.
Imagine that.
After the break.
Quality, speed, value for your money, and $1,000 off any roof replacement. That's the IWC advantage. IWC, Intermountain West Contractors, delivers on the things most important to you when it comes time to replace your roof. There could be a dozen different reasons why your roof needs replacement, but just one answer to the problem: IWC. With IWC, you get quality because roof replacement is their specialty, and each job comes complete with the best warranties from the most trusted roofing material manufacturer in America. You get speed because IWC understands your time is valuable. In most cases, they can replace an entire roof in just one day. And with IWC, there's the value of knowing they use top-tier quality materials in every installation and deliver it all at an affordable price. And now, for a limited time, save $1,000 on a roof replacement project. Visit IWCroofing.com or call 801-232-5690. That's 801-232-5690.
I found, Tim, that one of the hardest things about being a mom is just deciding what to cook for dinner every night.
I know.
Which is part of why I'm so excited to tell everybody about Beehive Meals.
It is a Utah company, and at some point we're going to have to tell the story of the Jacksons and how they actually got this going in 2019. But if you've been struggling with having tacos one night and spaghetti another night, open up your world for dinner with things like Mongolian beef stir fry or Parmesan honey pork roast.
Your family dinner has just never been easier than it is with these. They're pre-assembled freezer meals. I put it in the crock pot. I set it for how long it needs to go. It stays warm after that. And that way, if the family can't all eat together, if one person has basketball and another, it's just warm for whenever they're ready.
And by the way, less than $3.50 per serving. You couldn't go out to the store or out to dinner, certainly on your own, for that price.
You're absolutely right, Tim. I couldn't buy the ingredients for any less.
Start it for your family right now. Go to beehivemeals.com.
Have you Googled yourself lately? Are there negative posts from an ex-employee or from a former client? Maybe an outdated news article or sensitive personal information about your family? Search engines don't always get it right. For right or wrong, it's your reputation on the line. That's where Reputation Defender by Norton comes in. One of the most trusted names in online reputation repair, Reputation Defender has been fixing people's search results for over 15 years. Their cutting-edge approaches help you to wipe away unwanted information in your search results. They also promote the good stuff so that it rises to the top, helping you put your best foot forward. Your good name is too valuable to leave to the whims of a Google algorithm. Take control with Reputation Defender. You can start by getting your free reputation report card at reputationdefender.com. Or call 800-401-6681 to speak to an expert. That's 800-401-6681.
Did you know 96% of Americans lose an average of $111,000 in Social Security income? And it's because they claim their benefits at the wrong time. Don't lose $111,000 in Social Security income that's rightfully yours. Learn how you could wring every nickel out of your benefits on Retirement Solutions Radio this Saturday afternoon at 3 o'clock, right here on KSL, News Radio 1027.
Picture this.
A warm summer evening, the sun setting behind the mountains, blankets being laid out on the cool grass, and world-class music. It's the Utah Symphony's Deer Valley Music Festival, and you're invited to escape into the music. With 12 concerts at Snow Park Amphitheater featuring country pop sensation Leanne Rimes, the movie music of John Williams, alt-rocker Ben Folds, and the Beach Boys. Tickets are on sale now at DeerValleyMusicFestival.org. The sun is hanging in the sky ready to set. Blankets are spreading out across the cool grass. A slight mountain breeze can be felt as picnic baskets begin to open. It's the Utah Symphony's Deer Valley Music Festival, and you're invited to escape into the music. With 12 amazing concerts at Snow Park Amphitheater featuring hit headliner artists and everything from classical to classic rock, there's something just for you. Tickets are on sale now and going fast at DeerValleyMusicFestival.org.
Any Hour Services can help unclog any drain in your house, whether you have a backup, a clog, or a slow drain you want fixed. Call Any Hour Services or visit anyhourservices.com.
With the 3 things you need to know this hour, I'm Dan Bomas. First, police say they've recovered a bunch of pride flags that were stolen from homes in Holiday. Second, Utah's Division of Outdoor Recreation says they're not kidding about life jackets for people out having fun on the water. Third, Senator Mitt Romney says Utah is getting a raw deal when it comes to processing passports, and he wants to see the government speed things up. Right now, it's 74 degrees with a thunderstorm in Salt Lake City. And back to Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Get deeper insights on the news from Inside Sources.
Welcome back to Inside Sources. You're here with me, Leah Murray, and my friend Derek Brown, who, like our senator, has some feelings about the passports. So because we just had that right before we came in, Derek, I think it's all right to talk about listening to what Senator Romney said about why this issue should be looked at.
This day and age, I think it's unreasonable to expect Americans to think it's going to take them months to get a passport, particularly a passport renewal. Because they can, if they apply for a credit card where they're going to get thousands of dollars of credit from a bank, they can get the card in days. And yet, an American citizen who's had a passport for 50 years can wait months and months to get a passport. It just doesn't make sense.
So what do you think, Derek?
Well, can I rant? Is this the appropriate time of the show where we rant?
No, you have to be elevated conversation.
Elevated. How about an elevated rant?
There you
okay,
go.
so one of the things we're going to do here at KSL is inform our listeners of something they may not be aware of. But the reality is, there's a couple things you need to know. First of all, if your passport expires within 6 months from now, you can't leave the country. I don't think most people know that. And in fact, one of the calls I get most frequently from friends and family members dealing with the government, and this is probably because I've worked in a senator's office on a number of occasions, is can you help me with a passport?
Right.
Now, in the good old days, there were expedited ways of doing it in a couple of days. But for some reason, the passport center for the United States government is not just unreasonably slow, it is unacceptably slow. And this is not just my anti-government rant. This is it's just completely absurd, and it takes forever. And can I give you an example, Leah?
Yes, please.
So everyone needs to know that it takes at a minimum 12 weeks just to renew your passport. So if you're planning on leaving the country, where we're in June, if you're planning on leaving the country, say before the 8th of September, and you need a renewal on your passport, and I know there's probably a lot of you out there who are listening thinking this very thing, I'm telling you, it's not going to happen. That's what's going on. In fact, here's a little anecdote. I had some friends that called me last week, a mom and dad who were going to Cancun on a vacation that they'd planned out for a long time. Their kids needed passport renewals, and actually it was more than 6 months out, but they thought, you know what, we might as well just do it. Let's get them all done. So the parents had passports, the kids didn't. They applied well over 3 months ago, and they still didn't have their passports.
Right.
And so, in fact, they called Senator Mike Lee's office, and they came back, and one of the interesting things, and you'll get a kick out of this, Leah, is apparently for kids, you only need a birth certificate to go across the border. For the adults, you need the passport. So because the passport agency had taken 13 weeks and they still hadn't got just the basic renewals back, they flew from here to San Diego, crossed the border with their kids to Tijuana, took a flight from Tijuana to Cancun, and that's how they're coming back.
Right, to just get around.
Just to get around it.
The
And it's
issue,
not like
right.
they waited until the last second. I mean, they planned 3 months in advance. So I know there is someone out there listening going, oh boy. And the reality is, if you are in a panic mode because you're less than 3 months out and need a passport, you know, I'm really sorry, but you need to jump on it, and you need to know that the likelihood of getting your passport here by, the 8th of September is almost non-existent.
Right. And if you're someone like me, who I have passports and my children have passports and I renew them when they need to be renewed, because I'm just never knowing when I'm going to travel. So I am just ready, right? I'm not getting a passport up against a trip that I'm having. I'll just have these passports. But one of the issues I thought was interesting here, because I grew up on the East Coast, Derek, and I grew up near New York City, which was a passport location, that actually San Diego's where you have to go, right? Like we're not close to a passport, like an office that you could get help with, right?
There's not one here in Salt Lake.
Right. So Senator Romney talked about that.
But also hope that there's a way to increase staffing. Perhaps, I'd like to build offices with physical presence, but perhaps at least pilot projects of some kind that allow us to have individuals surged in areas like Salt Lake City or somewhere in the Intermountain West, Boise or wherever, where we can get services for people in the Intermountain West without having to drive as many as 8 hours for the needs for in-person views.
Right, because the issue is that is actually really far away. Does that make
Well,
it
is,
adds a
and-
trip to get to be able to go on your trip.
And I can tell you a dozen times of people that I know in the past. It's so slow now. It's just unacceptable. But in the past, it's still been unacceptably slow, but not quite as slow. But because of that, I know of a dozen people who, in fact, a good friend of mine last year was leaving the country, and his passport had just expired, and he went, "Oh no, what do I do?" He found an appointment in the San Diego office the next day, so he flew to San Diego, got his passport, flew back here, and then took his flight. And that happens all the time. San Diego, Denver, Dallas. I can't tell you how often it happens where someone will fly literally to San Diego for a passport and then back because there's no other option.
Right. And so Rena Bitter, who is the Assistant Secretary for State Bureau of Consular Affairs, responded to the senator's request this way.
Thank you for raising the issue of geographic divergencies. It's something we really monitor a lot. We collect a lot of data on it. There are, I can throw out statistics at you, which will be unsatisfying, but we think that the best way for us to be able to serve the American public is through modernizing our systems and being able to surge our hiring.
So I feel like that was a lot of words for no, right?
That was like classic bureaucrats ease for, to say, well, we're monitoring the situation. It's getting worse and worse and worse, but don't worry. We're monitoring how bad it's getting.
But how do you feel about her answer, whether it's, unacceptable or not, right, Derek? But the idea is she's saying for us to do this job well, actually the best way to do it is to modernize the system, have more labor, instead of opening an office in Salt Lake City. Do you think she's right? Or are we talking about you think it's a better idea to have offices just all across the country, which then to me might be even more inefficient maybe?
I think the answer is yes on both fronts. They absolutely need to modernize. No question about it. And when you travel and you see, technology like Clear or even the visa entering, if you've come into America, recently from another country, there's just a facial recognition. The technology is there, no doubt about it. Now, will more offices help? Here's the problem with passport. With a passport application, there's only so much I think you can do without an in-person component. You know what I'm saying you actually probably physically need to be present at some point in the process. But this is not hard. That's why Senator Romney made the comment about, you apply for a large credit card for tens of thousands of dollars and you can basically get it FedExed to you by the next day. There's no reason that this should take 12 to 13 months.
Right, but Derek, if I'm getting a credit card, that's from a private bank, which I would fully expect to be super efficient. Am I hearing you argue that the federal government should get really competent and efficient?
Oh, heavens forbid. Heaven forbid. I don't know that we'd know what to do with that kind of
I
thing.
think you'd be very
But-
worried if that were true.
Exactly. So 2 points just to take away for those of you who just tuned in. Number one, if your passport is expiring within 6 months from now, you can't leave the country. So look at your passport if you have a trip coming up and be aware of that. And number two, if you're going somewhere within the next 12 to 13 weeks and you haven't applied to renew your passport and your passport is expired, you're probably in trouble as well. So not to be the bearer of gloom and doom, but here at KSL, we want to provide information that is helpful because when it comes to questions involving the federal government, I probably get this one more than any other single question.
Derek, it has been a pleasure spending 2 hours with you today. Thank you very much.
Likewise, thank you, Leah.
Yeah, and for our listeners, thank you so much for being with us. I will see you tomorrow. Thank you for joining us on Inside Sources today. Don't go away. You're going to want to stick around for Jeff Kaplan's Afternoon News.
KSL FM Midvale, KSL Salt Lake City.